Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their all-access pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. There's a wonderful crew of people over on Patreon giving money every month to make sure that this show and this podcast happen and cut my overhead costs so that I can keep doing it. I can't express my thanks enough for their support and their belief in what we're doing over here. And if you'd like to join them and help support this podcast, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support this show. And actually, now that we are starting to get sponsors for the episode, my $3 supporters will get the episodes ad-free. If you want to support at a $5 level, you'll get ad-free episodes and you will get additional content every week. I thank all of you that have given money to help keep this going, and I thank all of you that are going to become supporters and help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you so much. 40 Waters, welcome to the latest episode of the 40 Watt Podcast. Well, it's the latest episode if you're listening to it when it comes out. If there's another episode after this one, it's not the latest anymore, and this is old news, so hello from the past. So I want to talk to you about a couple of things before we get started with my guest. I'm super excited this week. I'm happy to have an episode up. I've been a little bit out of sorts for the last few weeks. For y'all know, we mentioned it in the last episode. My work life got really, really crazy. It's been a pretty heavy workload this year. Finally got most of that behind me, so it's ready to go forward. I've got some videos ready that I'm working on for YouTube. I got some other really cool stuff I'm ready to share with y'all that's coming up. Remember that if you're interested in helping support the podcast and I guess I'm going to say YouTube channel, because this is going to be back out on YouTube, going to start making that happen again. Go over to 40wattpodcast.com or patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for as little as $3 a month, you can support the podcast and you can help keep the things going around here, and you can get all of the podcasts without the spiel at the beginning that you just heard about Patreon and TrueFire, which, by the way, you should definitely click those links down below and get TrueFire. Lessons are better than gear. Remember that. But for $5 a month, you get episode without the ads, plus you get extra content. Can y'all tell I'm a little rusty? I'm trying to remember all this. I don't have notes anymore. I used to keep a notepad that had all this written down so I'd remember to say it, but not anymore because I thought I was a pro. I'm so good at this. So anyway, welcome y'all. Glad to be back. Things are about to get a lot more consistent here. I've got some other cool things coming out and I'm ready to get them to you. Done. Less than 2 minutes. I time myself in doing this, Jeremy. It's really weird.
Good.
I look down at the timer. I'm like, how fast did I get the spiel at the beginning done?
Good.
So this week we've got Jeremy, the guitar hunter, on the episode. Jeremy, how are you, sir?
Hey, buddy. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, dude. I'm glad you're here. Like for a bunch of different reasons. One, I wanted to catch up anyway. Two, you're a recurring guest. This is your third time on the podcast.
I know.
That means I don't have to do the spiel about who you are. We get to jump right into conversation.
No, let's do it.
We don't need
my
the
blood type. I grew up in the mountains. Yeah.
Social security number and birthday.
I'm glad that I'm no longer the I hate reverb guy. That's all I'll say.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I remember that.
I've moved into like the cool old Martins guy.
Do you still hate reverb though?
Yes. They just raised their prices again.
Well, they didn't. The companies that process credit cards did. Yeah. So everywhere is going up.
Well, they've been making at least 1.5 points on their credit card processing. So a friend of mine's a big wig in that world.
Oh, really?
And he said there is no possible way that Etsy is paying more than 1.7%. And
so
that
tracks. Big company. Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they like, so maybe. but I think they just got really used to that extra point of profit. Anyway,
that's possible. No,
I haven't used reverb since 2019.
Wow. I use it more than I should. I should be banned at this point.
Well, I guess I should say I've bought stuff. I haven't sold anything.
Okay. No, that tracks. That makes sense. I've sold too much, and I'm not looking forward to doing my taxes next year where I have to do all the addendums for like how I have not actually made profit this year from selling stuff.
Oh, you don't live in the like, oh, I have 32. Last year I had 31 different 1099s.
Oh my gosh.
Money from everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there's a part of me that's really glad that podcasting is not my day job, because that's what it would look like. Like videos and the podcasting, it's like every company you work with sending you a 1099 because you made more than $600 a year. Oh my gosh. And well, at least in Mississippi, it's $600. I don't know what it is.
No, I think that's federal.
Oh, is that the federal? Oh my god!
I think so. Like I've gotten it from eBay this year. I got it from a couple others. PayPal. Yeah. That's the other thing is if you're selling guitars and people are paying you through PayPal, over $600 for the year.
Yeah, which is wild. And that's a guitar in your world. That's one guitar easily crosses that. I mean, you're dealing in vintage Martins and Guilds and Gibsons and stuff like that. So
yeah, so I mean, it's just going to be from the ground up, and not to go on a libertarian rant, but it's taxed money that went to an account that you already paid taxes on, and then you're paying sales tax, and then you're paying tax on the money that you already made. So it's 14 times taxed.
Yeah. And as someone who's not necessarily an anti-tax person in me, we're treading on dangerous ice.
We just jumped right in.
Yeah, no. So I'm not an anti-tax person, but it's that there does come a point where it's like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Yeah. I have to question, where that money's going for. We're not going to get way down this rabbit hole, but I'm a librarian in my day job. One of the noble pursuits, I believe, for tax funding, and we're fighting for that funding as libraries. Why do we have to fight so hard if we're taxing so much?
Absolutely. And I will say, I think that success is an infinite resource, and I am happy to pay all that we're paying. I mean, and also I'm incredibly privileged that my full-time gig is chasing down guitars, making videos about it. I got to travel the world this year. Yeah. I got to go to the Czech Republic.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm incredibly thankful for what I get to do. And I don't actually have much of a soapbox on it, but it gets me that it's because I want people to discover how to cultivate a guitar collection that they really feel proud of and they love and that they really understand, but it's going to take a bunch of moves. And so what really is hard, that it just adds another hurdle and another challenge that I have to coach people through once you're like, well, now there's a tax implication on this thing that gives you reprieve from your full-time gig.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hardest part for those that are like me. This isn't my full-time gig. I should not need at least an associate's degree in accounting to figure out whether I can buy or sell a guitar this year, because I'm not going to have to pay extra taxes on it.
Yeah. And then, because that's the hard part is it gets taxed as income, which is income. Not. It's not income. And just the way we tax income is really steep, and it's complicated. So all of a sudden you're like, it's not hard to chew up, if you're, most people, they're going to make 15, 20% on a guitar deal. And if all of a sudden you're paying, like in Virginia, it's 23% by the time you pay state and federal FICA, like you just lose track of that at the time you're buying it. But later on, you're like, oh, that, $100 I made on that guitar was actually negative $4.
Right.
And, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it come on, Jeremy. Tax isn't complicated. You understand all 75,000 pages of the tax code, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move
on to guitars. Yeah. So what's new in your world for guitars? Like what have you got now? What's changed your guitar world?
Lots has changed in my guitar world. So this year has been really hard, and it's been like really hard and incredibly exciting. I've gotten to do things I never thought I would get to do in the guitar world. So I guess let's start with the really exciting stuff. So earlier this year I got to go and I spent 9 days in the Czech Republic with FERC guitars, and it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. They really are just an incredible manufacturing process. They're using, in my video I kept talking about, they're freaking robots everywhere. But they're using these collaborative robots that can like shape the contour of a neck heel, and they can cut the headstock, and they'll articulate the neck all around. And so it was a really amazing thing. I also got to meet big YouTubers that I'd never met. And, I spent most of the time feeling like an imposter. Like, I don't belong here. Like, I'm just a dude from the mountains in Virginia that likes guitars.
Right.
And then there's, so it was like Kafir. Do you know Kafir? He's from Israel. He's a YouTuber. And but he does like all these like amazing shreddy like covers of Guns N' Roses and Dire Straits.
Oh, wow.
And it was him. And then it was a channel called Guitarra Viva, which is from Spain.
Yeah.
And then
I've actually seen them.
Dude, Carlos is freaking hilarious. He got us into, one night we're sitting around. I'm sure he'll love me telling this story. So the first night we got there, everybody's jet lagged. Even though the guys coming from Europe were only like 2 hours off.
Right. It's enough.
We were 7 hours off. And so we were there the first night, and I was exhausted. So I was like, I just can't. We went to a brewery. And so it's like, I had 2 beers. It's 9 o'clock. My body thinks it's 4 a.m. or something. So I was like, I can't go out. And Carlos was like, come on, anybody, let's go. And so eventually we all went to bed. He went to a bar by himself. Then the next day, he's real weird. All day we're like, what'd you do last night? He's like, it got weird, man. What happened? And he's like, I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. And so it's all day. We're like filming stuff and making content. And I was like, what happened? And he's like, after dinner, he's like, okay, here's the deal. I went to a bar, and there was a man with the head of a panda, and he cornered me in a small room, and he said I had to take shots until I could tell what drink I was having, and then I could leave. And he's like, are you poisoning me? And he said, the panda said nothing. And then he's like, and then the man with the panda head opened a door, and there's a woman that came out that looked like a band conductor. She looked like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And we're all just like, this cannot be reality. This cannot have actually happened. And he just kept like leaning into like, I tell you, it was so scary. They wouldn't let me leave. I was so scared. He's like, and then I finally drank a shot, and I was like, oh, this is sweet tea. And they're like, exactly. And he said, can I go now? If you want, you can also go to the bar upstairs. And so we're all like, what the hell? So it's my wife and I. It's a couple. It's Clara, who's the marketing director from Ferk Guitars. It's It's Marcus. He's from Italy. Then there's another guy from Spain, another guy from Israel. And so we're like, let's go to this bar. And so we go to this bar, and we walk in, and there is a freaking guy with a panda head.
That's amazing.
And we're, oh my gosh, what is this? So then we kind of get what it is. And so all of a sudden you go in, and you're like, it's this kind of like dinner theater bar thing. You have to pick a character, and then they give you drinks based on the character you pick. And then they ask you trivia questions. They're kind of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, you're on the road and you're walking down, and you see somebody, should you do this or call the police? And so you play this game, and then if you win, you get invited upstairs to this to the bar. And the bar was freaking awesome. It looked like Blade 3. Like white counters, bright neon lights. It was awesome. So I will say another funny guitar thing, because it's like literally 4 guitar YouTubers are there.
Right.
So we're sitting there, and I end up, the character that I get picked, or I picked the last one that no one had picked, which was the rocker, which I wouldn't have picked, because it was like, there's a samurai, there's a cowboy, there's another one. It was like a EDM girl was the other character. And so I was like, okay, I'll be the rocker, whatever. And it was just kind of cheese ball, like butt rock stuff.
Yeah.
But when we got upstairs, I want a drink, and they said, you will win this drink if you can tell us who this artist is. And they hand me this really cool coffee mug, or it's like a mug that's the shape, it's like a rectangle. And on the back of it, where they hand it to me, it's Jimi Hendrix, but I see that it's like a guitar amp. And I immediately flip it around and look at it, and they're like, they asked me who this is, and I immediately look at it, and it was a JCM 2000 that was a 212 with Jimi Hendrix on the back. And I was like, he would never play that amp. That amp came out like 40 years after him. And so I start talking to all the guitar nerds about like, look at this. It said 210, didn't say 212. So I was like, they would never be 10-inch speakers. It wouldn't be a 2000. Look, this has multi-effects. And the bartender's like, I think you got the question wrong. It's Jimi Hendrix. I was like, of course it's Jimi Hendrix. But my wife was dying of like, you nerd. Like, she's like, there are more of you all around the world.
There's so many of us. So at some point in this trip, it actually involved actual guitars, though.
So many guitars,
because I'm already into this
little
bar.
Air conditioning.
Like I already know I need to go visit this bar. So,
dude, it's in Brno. I don't remember what it's called. It's on my Instagram. But if you ever in Brno, Czech Republic,
all right,
it's pretty awesome. But yeah, so after that, so all of us, we each kind of figured out which videos we were going to make. So Kafir was going to be in the showroom, and he was going to play like amazing fingerstyle shreddy stuff in that room. And then Carlos, they were going to do, since there's never been any Spanish representation of FERC guitars, they were going to do like a full Spanish, like how to build a guitar, and do kind of that, like, you know, like if you're thinking like, what video would you make if you go to a guitar factory? You're like, we're going to do a how it's made.
Right.
So anyway, I don't mean to like, to me, I'm like, I've made that video 35 times and I'm over that idea. But theirs was really awesome because they also shoot in like full blown incredible 4K. Oh, and it was fun seeing them. I'm like, oh, that's how you do this if you had a lot more money. And if you have 3.5 million subscribers,
right? At that point, you got a production team at that point.
Exactly, and he had an editor and a videographer, and I just nerded out on all the camera stuff with them, and it was super fun. So my video was, I did a tour as well, but I was specializing on 3 attributes that FERC does that just make them really unbelievable. As far as I don't know of anyone else that's doing as much intensive work on how they build their truss rods into the necks of the guitars, how they do their finishes. They do UV cured finishes,
which is wild.
They have like, it's incredibly thin. It's half the thickness of a sheet of paper, but it's as strong as polyurethane, but moves and breathes like nitro. And they're like,
I've been getting really fascinated about guitar finishes lately. Because not just with acoustic guitars, but like, for example, I've got a couple of Cower guitars, and Doug only does poly, but he does poly
because it looks crispy and beautiful.
Yeah, but he does it so thin that it feels and behaves a little more like nitro.
Okay.
And then also, most recently, I got a Grez Mendocino baritone. And so Barry does these really, really incredible.
Hold on, his name's Barry and he sells baritones?
Yeah, Barry and baritones. Barry.
The baritone.
Barry from Grez Guitars, because he's got a really interesting last name. Oh no, Barry's fantastic. So he builds these. Actually, I'm just gonna grab it. It's right here. So he does these really, really incredible baritones.
Ooh, yes. Dude, that's cool. Ooh, I like the headstock. That little ring at the top of and that's actually got a piece of metal in there. So is that so you can like hang it on a nail in your shed?
I wouldn't. But so the tops on his guitars are reclaimed redwood.
Oh, cool.
And they're super thin.
Whoa.
And they're semi-hollow. Every guitar is semi-hollow. There's no way I'm going to be able to show you this on camera. But
I see the glitter.
Yeah, but you can see the ridges in the wood because the finish is so thin. It keeps that acoustic resonance. Also, he's one of the very few people I know that does one-piece carved backs.
Ooh, so you're probably doing them out of a CNC?
Yes, I think so. Don't quote me on that, Barry. If I'm wrong, don't get mad at me.
That's cool.
But yeah, no, he is. So yeah, I'm really starting to get fascinated with the way people finish guitars because everybody has their own thing. And the way Barry and Doug does it at Cower. I don't know, really fascinating to see how people can do. Yeah. Because everybody's like nitro. Well, nitro's really bad for you and really bad for the people putting it on. there's a way to do poly that's better.
Yeah. And that, I mean, there are other options out there. So the other thing I did is that I just finished building my first acoustic guitar ever. With Showalter guitars. And so my channel hasn't seen it, but because I think the finale video will come out this Thursday, the final reveal. But I've got it here if you want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if this is an audio podcast, sorry. But so...
Oh, man, that's rad.
So, yeah. So the big thing about it, there are two main things that are really shocking about it. So it's sycamore top, Osage orange back and sides, but the bridge is Osage orange. So it's this like golden, mustardy yellow color.
Yeah.
And then the other thing
also,
up here,
how common is sycamore? How common is that as its own wood? I didn't think so.
No. So Steve's his passion is using local timbers that grow up in the Shenandoah Valley. So all of this wood he cut down himself. He milled. It's like in old order Mennonite sawmills that most of this stuff has been cut.
Oh, that's so cool.
So the only wood that is not from so sycamore on top, Osage orange back and sides. The only woods that aren't from the valley is the black ebony fingerboard.
Yeah.
There's a black walnut on the headstock here. And then there's a walnut stripe down the back of the neck. And then this is an ebony stripe, which I didn't think this was like the first day we made the choice, like, oh, let's do an ebony strip on the back. That'd be cool. And I mean, dude, the whole time it was like 3 months, 21 episodes. And it was just like, it was like building a plane while flying. It's like, all right, how do you want to do? You want herringbone on it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Sure. Like, do you want to do tortoise on this, or do you want to do ivory? So sycamore is very uncommon as a top wood.
Yeah.
So as I've thought about this guitar and I've thought about the densities of things. Okay, so the sycamore is very similar to mahogany. Lots of grain, but it's a really warm sounding tone wood in itself. The back and sides are Osage orange, and Osage orange is really, really hard.
Okay.
It's almost as hard as ebony. And so,
really?
And so we compared it. So Steve was building a guitar with Macassar ebony back and sides, and it was really similar, like when you would like knock on it. And so, I'm like, okay, so maybe this is like a mahogany top, ebony back and sides guitar. I'm like, is there one of those in the world?
Right.
I don't think so.
Does that exist? No.
Like any guitar with a mahogany top is going to have mahogany back and sides.
Right. At least every one I've ever seen.
Yeah. So I'm sure somewhere out there, but I've been poking around. So my thing was like, I didn't know how this guitar was going to sound, but I wanted to just, as someone who I think your place has a really strong bearing on who you are and what you value. And so for me, the Valley has taught me lots about humility, hard work, compassion for others, being kind to people that are very different than you. And that's, a lot of the Mennonite upbringing. I didn't grow up Mennonite, but I grew up around a lot of people that had lived all around the world. And it was really helpful that when the U.S. has brought in immigrants, lots of them have come to the Valley,
right,
and they find their home in a place, where people are working really hard to make sure that people feel welcomed in and loved and supported. So anyway, that's why. So for me, I was like, I just want to build a guitar that's as much from the Valley as I can. And it sounds great. It's I don't know. I'll play it a little bit. I have my noise canceling headphones on, so that was kind of hard to hear. Hopefully it was good.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the internet's compression does to it.
So, so the last thing we did is I left off some frets up here above the 15th fret. And it's interesting. I don't listen to him much, but Otis Taylor has an amazing signature guitar from Santa Cruz that I've always loved. And he does it at the 16th fret. So one more than I did. But he leaves the frets off. Then there's a place for an inlay. So the plan is I'm going to get a really cool kind of mosaic looking fish. Inlaid from Nathan Wright at Wright Luthery, which is actually my other guitar that I brought with me to Nashville. which we haven't talked about that. I'm in Nashville kind of indefinitely. But yeah, so anyway, so the second thing I did this year that was awesome was built a guitar with Showalter guitars.
Yeah, dude, that's so rad. Yeah, I was following that, and you thought you weren't going to mention it, but I definitely was intrigued when you sanded through the guitar.
Oh, yes.
Again, learning to fly, build a plane while flying it, kind of thing.
Oh, dude, it's so painful. Because so I mean, number one, there's a thing in philosophy like observed behavior will never be real behavior.
Yes.
That's a rough paraphrase. I forget what it's called, but I've heard
the idea tracks though.
Yeah. So like the idea, like, okay, well, I'm not sanding a thing the way I would sand it. I'm sanding it in a way that there's a bright light in my face and a camera, aimed at my hands. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of stuff that you just, like I'm handy, but I had never built a guitar. Like I've built electric guitars, and hurt
they're a lot
feelings.
More forgiving.
They are so much easier to build than an acoustic guitar. Now you still need lots of complicated skills like soldering and the setup work and fret work. That stuff is really hard. But with this, it's like there's a fine carpentry component to it. And there's this idea like, hey, you could be 16 days in and make a mistake that it's just over. Like you just have to start again. So thankfully, I knew that I was going to make a mistake. I'm glad that I made a severe mistake, which is I sanded through the side. Like all of a sudden I started seeing the walnut kerfing from the inside.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh. And it was a bunch of things. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't really paying attention. And then the other thing was we probably used too aggressive of a sandpaper. Like I used the sandpaper that a guy who's built 120 of these, I'm using what he would use.
Right. So he's go a little lighter for you because you're going to overpressure it.
I went 100 grit and it was like 15 minutes just sanding. I was trying to get in like right in the waist of the guitar.
Right.
And I was trying to get here, but I kept coming back over on the upper bout. So it basically got to where it was a hole right up against my chest was where it would be. And so we tried to figure out right away, like, okay, what do I do? How do I fix this? And one of the things that I found about myself, and I think it's why I'm drawn to why I've used the catchphrase of music and friendship. So for me, it's like, I often ask myself, who can help me? Not who can get it done? Not how can it get done?
Right.
And so for me, I immediately thought like, who could help me? Who knows what I'm going through? And so I thought of my friend Gray Burchett. Are you familiar with him? Have you seen Burchett guitars?
No, I haven't.
Dude, he's making incredible guitars in North Carolina. Super modern. They're very, very unusual. But I knew right away that he would help. And what's funny is he actually didn't answer. But while I was leaving him a voicemail explaining, I thought of an idea. So I'll give Gray the so at first we're like, okay, we've got to come up with a way to patch this thing. And so our first thought was, well, we're in the mountains. Let's do like a couple like rows of mountains. That would be cool. But then we just looked at the design and it basically had to come down back to the side to where the binding was.
Right.
And so it just looked really dumb. Like it looked to me, it looked like it would just be like a clump of mountains or a poop emoji as the first couple. So then I was like, okay, well, we generally have a triangle shape. What do we do with that? And then while I'm on the phone with Gray, I was like, we could do an outlet in Virginia. And so that's what we ended up doing. So there's on a bright orange sides, so we ended up doing the shape of Virginia. Oh, come on, focus. Anyway, it's just going to focus on the background. But anyway, so I'm super happy with how this guitar turned out. And it's good that it I don't know. People have picked on it. They're like, well, if it's not perfect, I wouldn't want to finish it. Or they'll say things like that.
No.
And for me, I'm like, why would you expect perfect? Like, I can't make perfect things. No one can make perfect things.
The first one is never perfect. The first, it does insert anything in the end of that phrase. First, oh my gosh, the first pancake is never perfect. It's always a mulligan. It's the mulligan pancake.
Yeah, and then the pan gets hot, and then you do it. So now, I immediately know, oh man, I really want to build some more guitars now. I now, especially coming out of it, knowing the skills, and then also knowing some of the design things. Oh, well, this wood sounds like that, and I think it would be really good if we swapped it around and just changing around some things.
Yeah, and see, that's rad. It's just you tried it. You're in it now. Making acoustic guitars is to me, it seems like I've got a buddy of mine who I knew in college, who moved to Boston. I'm sorry, moved to New York first. I think he's in Boston now. I could have that reversed. Learned piano tuning and like got really into piano tuning. Like he's tuned the pianos at Carnegie Hall at this point a couple of times. Cow. And then he decided to start building acoustic guitars, and he's building these incredible acoustic guitars. And he posted a whole bunch of photos, and I got to talking to him about his process and how he got into it. And there's so much to it. And this is not me saying that electric guitar builders have no skill. They obviously have a lot of skill.
Yeah.
But there's so much more of a process involved in building that acoustic guitar and getting it right. And just the act of shaping sides. There's a couple of builders, luthiers on YouTube that I've started following. And of course I'm immediately blanking on names, but watching them shape and build like guitar sides is one of the most therapeutic things to watch. Like,
dude, it's so good. Because you start learning about, like, I mean, the more I get into it, the more I just am amazed at the amount of physics and how great all of the skills have to come together, and how wonderful this thing is by the time you're done. Like, I was amazed at, like, what is it, plasticizing? So certain saps in woods, once they get up to about 180 degrees, all of a sudden they let go of holding that board into a rigid shape, and all of a sudden they'll let go and they'll take whatever shape. You know, there are spiritual lessons to be learned. Like, under pressure and heat, you will be molded. And so, like, bending the sides is such a fun part. Then there's this
Daisy Tempest is the person.
Dude, she's amazing.
Builds. Yeah, she's building really cool.
She's
guitars.
Incredible. Dude, E.J. Henderson is another one that's incredible. Her dad is Wayne Henderson, but she is unbelievably talented. And she's especially good at inlay. She just does incredible work. Oh, well, yeah, I have another story for you, which I can't talk about too much because it's currently unfolding. But this year has been a year of, like, things have been really hard as far as, and I don't mean like just money has been hard, owning a small business. And, so over the years I've been like, I love this guitar. I'm never going to sell this guitar. And then all of a sudden you're looking down the barrel of, like, well, I want to keep doing this, but I also have kids and a mortgage and responsibilities. And so I've sold 2 guitars that I really, really love this year. One, I had to sell my Waterloo WLS earlier this year.
Yeah. And
that's an exceptional guitar. Now there are 2 guitars coming that I think will hold an even more nostalgic place in my heart. One is I've got a 00018, like a 30 style 00018 coming from an amazing young builder in the Netherlands. His name is Rasmus, and he's just so talented. And so he asked me, he's like, hey, I want to build you a guitar. What do you want to do? And so we kind of came up with a plan. And so anyway, that guitar will be exceptional. But I sold my Waterloo. And I think the big thing, too, was that I sold the Waterloo. I paid $1,600 for it. And they're so hot right now.
Yep.
That somebody offered to pay me $3,400.
You got to go. You got to do it.
Yeah. So I was like, I mean, because it's still a mortise and tenon joint, 12 fret, ladder braced guitar. Like, it's not worth $3,400 in my opinion. Sorry if the guy that bought it is listening to this.
Well, lots of things do that, and not everybody likes to talk about money numbers, right? And again, we're recording this in 2022, so if you're like $3,400, that's cheap, or $3,400, that's so much money. Well, you see when we're recording this, but
in this moment, yeah.
And people don't want to talk about the money and the value, and they're like, oh, but if it's a great instrument, look, if you can replace it, and money, you got to make a living, and and like you said, it's not worth that much money, but somebody's going to pay it. I tell people all the time, one that is constantly talked about, and I'm going to put it up here. So this pedal, the Analog Man King of Tone. I'm going to try to, this is my 3rd time through the list. This is my 3rd one. And I'm going to keep this one. But
isn't the MXR just as good?
It's good. It is
I'm
very
sorry.
good.
I'm kidding.
I'm sure it's, look, if Mike signed off on it, then it's great. That's the way I look at it. Because that man is meticulous. He would not sign off on it if it did not sound good. But so I love this pedal. It's my favorite overdrive ever since I got my first one 10 years ago. Almost 10 years ago. But and I'm gonna hold on to this one. The second one I got, I had a money crunch a few years ago and ended up selling it. And here's the thing. Here's making this point. This is a $200 and I don't know $70, $265.
Yeah,
brand new. You get the red gain, high gain side. You could pay an extra $10. I paid the extra 30 to get it in gold. You know what I mean?
I was wondering, because aren't they normally that kind of like purpley?
Yeah, they are normally. It's on my other board.
Okay, yeah.
So, but they're normally purple with gold writing. This one's gold with purple writing. I wanted the inverse.
Yeah, that one's cool.
But here's the deal: that this is not a $700 overdrive.
Yeah,
this is not a seven. Do not pay. I'm telling y'all, listeners, do not pay $700 plus. I don't care what year it is for a King of Tone. It's an incredible pedal. It's my favorite sub $300 overdrive. It's actually just my favorite overdrive. But don't pay that much money for one.
Yeah.
I realize the wait list is long, but...
Yeah. Yeah, man, I've stayed away from that. Okay, so the first phase of my YouTube channel was, I'll teach you how to buy and sell guitars as a side hustle.
Yeah.
And that, people don't love that.
No.
So I switched gears to, which I still am in phase 2, kind of, but I've added phase 2B. So phase 2 is I will teach you how to buy the right guitars, sell the wrong guitars, and build a collection of guitars that you're really proud of and you love. A meaningful guitar collection.
Right. I love that term.
I'm still in that space, but I'm now switching gears to like, okay, well, when I went full time in YouTube, it was 2020. And it was February of 2020, and I just like filled up my car to go sell vintage guitars with John Schultz from True Vintage Guitar. We were going to split a table at the Asheville Guitar Show, and on the way there, they called it off because of COVID. Wow. And so like my whole channel had to change. I was like, well, I just left my full-time job.
Yeah.
And so, oh boy. So I had to like make it work. And so I switched gears into reviews and and thankfully like brands like Fender, invited me in to help do some stuff during that year. Right. But yeah, my third phase now is like, I just want to live an interesting guitar life and bring people along. And so that's been the really fun kind of season that we're moving into now. I still haven't told you what happened to my other guitar.
Oh yeah. So the Waterloo you sold.
Sold the Waterloo, and I'm bummed about that. I love that guitar. It's the lightest guitar I've ever owned. It sounds great. So the second guitar that I sold is my Hassan Dalton TDM.
Yeah.
So it's their like D18, kind of a hot rodded D18.
That's the one that surprised me the most when I saw you selling it. That
yeah,
really
yeah.
Me.
Yeah, so that one is the result. It was the end of my Dream Guitar Challenge a few years ago. Started with $500, bought and sold guitars, gave a percentage of money to charity out of the profits. And then I think it was 7 moves, wound up with a Hassan Dalton TDM for $2,000.
Wow.
And it's an excellent guitar. And I didn't want to sell it, but we've got some family stuff going on that having some extra money in the bank would be helpful. And so those are kind of at the highest part of the market they've been. And so I knew I have a couple guitars coming that would fill the role of, a big boomy dreadnought.
Yeah.
And so I sold my Hassan Dalton. So I sold it last week to a guy in West Virginia. He's not far from me. So I shipped it to him and he's like, hey, I got it. I don't like it. It's a little too beat up for me. I'm going to send it back. I was like, oh, great. Like, that's perfect. I would love to have this guitar back. I really didn't want to sell it.
Right.
And on Friday, it showed up at my house, and my assistant opened it up for me. And when she opened it, well, okay, hang on. He shipped it back. He didn't use my label. He bought his own label through FedEx.
Right.
So I ship and insure everything through UPS.
Right.
When he shipped it back, he shipped it through FedEx. And when my assistant opened it, the entire headstock is broken off of it.
Oh, no.
So it's like completely torched.
Oh, no.
So, but I mean, it was in a box. It was wrapped in bubble wrap. It was in a hard case.
Right.
So it must have really, really gotten hit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just at the very beginning stages of like, well, I already got paid. You were supposed to get the guitar back to me in the condition that it, that it left my possession.
Right.
So it's going to be painful. But I talked to Kimberly at Huss and Dalton, and right now they are busy building new guitars.
Right.
Forever. And so they have no bandwidth to build me an extra neck to put on this guitar.
Right.
So they said, hey, it'll be $1,600, but it's going to be probably 2 years.
Whew.
So who knows? I don't know how that's going to shake out.
Yeah,
makes me very sad.
That's rough. That is very sad. That makes all of my. I've had a couple of recent deals that went poorly. I'm really bad at selling stuff right now. I'm not good at it. One, there's stuff that just isn't selling right now. Like, yeah. To be really honest, amps aren't selling right now, and I think that's something that'll continue. I've noticed.
That means you should go scoop up some amps right now.
Oh, absolutely! It is.
If you got some money,
it is a complete buyer's market on amplifiers right now. If you've got money, go buy them.
Dude,
and I mean, and it's funny. It's because for a while there during COVID and during like just before, and especially in the 6 months after things sort of started to get back to normal, things like Princeton reverbs and deluxe reverbs and Tweed deluxes, everything in that small 112 low wattage snapped up and gone. At one point, buddy of mine in Nashville told me that he could find, clean, and sell a Princeton reverb for $4K, a vintage one for $4K in a day. They were snapping them up so fast in Nashville. Now, the rest of the country wasn't quite that market, but in Nashville, everybody wanted them. And so 3.5 to 4K was nothing for a 65 Princeton reverb. Yeah. Well, right now, people aren't moving amps as much. I think a lot of people bought some during the shutdown, and even the small ones, so even they aren't moving as well. But then,
you also look at like how many reissues are out there.
Yeah, there's so many.
And then you're like, well, now they just launched the Tone Master Princeton. So you're like, and I mean, that's the thing, like the HX Stomp, all those emulation things, like they freaking nail that tone. So
and now the Quad Cortex is suddenly more available. It's actually, they're starting to fill that demand. I'm actually seeing them used for less than new prices. That tells me that the supply has caught.
They're finally getting there.
Yeah. And honestly, this has always been my deal with things like the Princeton reverb, right? For example, the 65 reissue Princeton reverb. That's fine. I'm not going to be snobby about this, listeners. I'm just calling it like it is. It's a PCB mass manufacturer amp, right? Which fine. PCB can sound, so controversial. It can sound as good as anything else. It can.
If it sounds good, it is good.
Exactly. But also, like, let me see if I can turn behind me at where this microphone is. That's a Tyler JT14. It's a Princeton reverb. And used, you can pick these up for cheaper than a PCB Princeton reverb. And that is a point-to-point, hand-wired, made by a dude in New Jersey. I think they're in New Jersey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, well, that's what I've got. I've got an old Guild. It's a Guild 66J. Like the chassis, like the body and outside of it is from 1954. Two-tone leather and tweed. It's freaking cool. But inside, it's a hand-wired point-to-point 5E3. But it also has an optical trim added to it.
Oh.
I got it for $800. Like, it's just the coolest, and it's got a Weber Blue Dog. Yeah. Like, to me, I'm like, this is the freaking cat's pajamas.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So amps aren't selling as well. I'll digress just a little bit before I go way down that whole like rabbit hole of there are better options for about the same money or less. Yeah. Because the pedal world has slowed down dramatically as well.
It needs to. It's been just at full throttle.
Well, I think what's happened is the economic climate right now. It's a little uncertain. People aren't sure what to do.
Yeah.
And what it's hitting the hardest are the working class, those that, you know, a $200 pedal is not that big a deal to them, but it is it's not, you know, it's not a massive deal, but you do think about it. It's hitting that, like, I don't want to put into like financial tiers of people's economic status, but if you know who you are, if you're in this, like, it's harder for you to make that decision right now than it was a year ago to drop $200 on a pedal.
But especially because it goes back to what we said earlier tonight, which is, well, now if you buy and sell three $200 pedals,
right?
Now you're getting a tax bill at the end of the year.
Yes,
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not seeing it as much in some of the higher end, like, guitar market. I'm seeing some of that still hitting, still going.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Like, I was talking to John Schultz a couple weeks ago, because I just bought a '69 Martin D35 with Brazilian back and sides. It's one owner. Like, one guy bought it new in New Orleans, and he passed away, and my buddy was selling it for him.
Is that one you're going to hold on to, or going to actually sell that one?
No, I'm going to sell that one. I like money more than I like old guitars. Which that's usually the accusation people have in my comments. Like, he's just going to sell it. I'm like, I'm not Jeremy the guitar collector. Like, so with that one, I mean, it's an amazing guitar. I love D35s. But with that one, there's too much margin on it for me to sit on it. So it needs a neck reset. And that's the thing I really want to show people. Cause in the end, like, I don't feel a need to keep super expensive guitars. Like, the guitars I love most are super affordable, cool guitars, but I will go for like unusual and unique long before I'd go for, I don't know. I just recently had the thought, like, I love Martin guitars, but I think my interest is waning in them because it's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like cheering for Ford motor cars, where you're like,
right,
you can do it. But it's like, I mean, they're just so big and they're making so many guitars, and, you know, like, my allegiance isn't that exciting. But when I get to cheer for, like, the Huss and Daltons of the world, the Showalter guitars, the Ferks, Ferk is so big. But yeah. Anyway, where do we leave? Okay, from amps into guitars. Okay, I was talking to John. And we're talking about, John has said he's really slowed down on acoustic guitars because for him, acoustic guitars don't move.
Oh,
and
interesting.
For me, I'm in the exact opposite spot. The more YouTube content I make, the worse my electric guitar stuff does. And I've really fought that. Like, I don't want to give up on electric guitars. I love them and I really care about them. And old amps, old guitar, especially old Fenders, I really, really enjoy. But yeah, so for me, I can sell high-end ridiculous acoustic guitars every day. If I get a guitar like that D35, I put out the video, and within an hour I've got 200 emails of people saying, how much? I want to buy that guitar. And it's just like, hey, we'll put all these into a list. We'll let you know. We'll do a BCC when it's ready to sell.
That's wild.
Old electrics.
It's like a store that cultivates a clientele. You've
true.
Cultivated people know to go to you for this.
Yeah.
And so that took time. That took a lot of time.
Yes. Yeah. I've been doing YouTube for like 5.5 years now.
Yeah.
So
that's wild. I had to do a quick Google search because I couldn't remember if it was the D35. It was but it wasn't. It was the D45.
Oh yes, that's
what. That was the first really nice acoustic guitar I ever got to play because my music leader at church had a D45.
That's insane.
That's what he played every Sunday.
Because they were $8,000 in the 90s. They're like $11,000 now.
They are. There is you can get them at Sweetwater for $9,700 right now.
Use my affiliate code.
Right.
I'll send you a link.
Or if you want to just email Sweetwater and say, hey, 40 Watt should have an affiliate code. I mean,
you don't have one?
No, man.
Come on.
I'm small time around here.
I'll get you in there. I can't do.
Yeah.
I'll go to bat for you.
All right, I appreciate it. I really do. Especially as
Dude, I don't know
I'm
how
starting to push a little harder this year. Because you were talking about, the phases of your YouTube, right? And so I did the just putting myself out there a little bit, putting the podcast out on, and I'm going to try to, I don't have, the video has been the issue for some of it. And so there's going to be a few episodes that I haven't had up on YouTube that I'm just going to put up with a image and be like, hey, there's no video for this, but here's the podcast, just to have all the episodes. And I'm going to put this one up, and I did a few demos here and there. I've kind of enjoyed the demo thing a little bit, but I don't want to become a demo channel.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to do that. So I think the next phase for me is I want to start answering questions. And I don't mean like, hey, send me questions, I'm going to answer them. I mean, what am I thinking about this week or this month that I'm like, I learned this thing and it answered this question for me. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who had this question about how do I use this, or what does this do, or whatever it might be. Like right now I'm waiting for one more pedal to get here. I'm working on a shootout. So I had Riley from Gecko Pedals on a few weeks ago, and he sent me a Geckoplex, so I've been checking it out, and I've got a full tone tube tape echo. And so I'm like, oh, cool. Let's see if it can actually do it. Like, can this pedal actually sound like this tape delay? And then one of my Patreon supporters had an El Capistan, so he sent me one. He sent me his El Capistan, so I'm going to check that out. And I've also got a Bell Epoch Deluxe on the way from Catlin Bread.
That's awesome.
So I want to find out. That's going to be the question I'm answering is, can this thing actually do, can it replace my way too expensive tape delay?
So two things about content creation that I've painfully learned these lessons. So think about like biggest movie of 2018 was Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 hours and 5 minutes. I think one of the truths about content creation is there is no content that is too long.
Yeah.
There is only content that is too boring.
That's true.
And
I see that with the podcast, because now the YouTube metrics, no, I get that. Yeah. People don't chime in for the whole thing. I need to get better about listening to my own podcasts and putting chapter markers in. I'm not good at that, but the other thing is that but when on like audio platforms, like on Spotify, where I get a lot of stats, even though it's my second most listened to platform, Apple Podcasts is still just bigger. But Spotify gives me metrics, and like every episode is like 96% average listen.
That's 98%.
Amazing. Oh yeah, it's not,
because I will say
it's a podcast thing.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, you are very interesting, and you bring on really interesting people. I was driving back with my family. We were leaving Florida at like 4 a.m. Coming home from vacation last year, and I listened to like 4 episodes of yours, like right in a row. I think it was you and 60 Cycle Hum, and you guys, like, it was hilarious.
Oh yeah. Ryan's a riot.
Dude, he's just, and it's like, and I understand he's also a podcaster and he understands how to be entertaining, but
that's it.
Like, so if you guys, like, there's no content that's too long, there's only content that's too boring. So that's like, you can go for 4 hours if it is interesting. Like that podcast, Hardcore History, like everyone is 2.5, 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And
I've gotten really into Cocaine and Rhinestones, which granted Tyler Manco only has 2 seasons, but it's so good. I'm not even that big a country fan, but I feel like I am now because of that podcast.
Actually, that's what the Dolly Parton, that one a couple years ago, the Dolly Parton one. What was it called? It was so good.
I don't remember.
Or the Richard Simmons one a couple years ago, like Where in the World is Richard Simmons?
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end, he's like, I just was tired of people.
Or, and woe be unto me for invoking him. You got Joe Rogan. I mean, that dude does like 7-hour podcasts sometimes.
Dude, he is really good about being interesting. And for him, it's just like, be endlessly curious, and be willing to rethink what your assumptions are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the other part of content, and you know this, and you also do this really well, is bad audio can make bad video.
Yes.
Like they'll put up with bad video quality a lot longer, but if it's too loud, too quiet, staticky, if it's out of sync with the video, people will just click out of it, unsubscribe it, report you as spam, tell the internet you're awful. So
that was my biggest hurdle when I first started putting them on YouTube, was trying to sync the audio, and that actually sent me down this rabbit hole of, okay, let's try StreamYard, let's try Zoom, it's how I landed on Riverside, actually, which is what I use now, riverside.fm, is that I couldn't get it to sync. I could not. I had so many problems. And don't get me wrong, I still have some issues out of Riverside, but what Riverside does, it allows me to download separate audio files and separate video files. So then I can edit each one individually and make them sync and then put them back together. And so that made it much simpler.
Oh, man, nothing's worse than like a video track with no audio linked to it. And then you just have to manually, you're like looking at, you're like, hit a consonant real hard. Yeah. And then, oh, it's so awful.
Dude, yeah, no, it's so bad. I can remember sitting with one episode where I had, within the first 30 minutes of the video, I had something like 60 edit points on the audio, like, because it would slow down and speed it, like there's bad rate issues, till I finally just ripped the video and put it up on YouTube, was like, I'm very sorry, due to issues with the video, there's no video for this.
Yeah. When we were doing my course, Write Guitars Faster, my editor, I had an old MacBook at the time, and the same thing. Like, so we had an audio track that matched up to a video, and if you would just click through, like, you would hear like it's normal volume, normal everything, but throughout it was about 7 seconds longer than the clip. But we know we started and stopped it. But it was the same thing. Like the processor on the computer every now and then would just give these little stutters.
Yes.
And so we'd have like, all right, so we got 7 minutes that it's tracking, and then all of a sudden it's just off. Like it's off by over a second. And then we'd chop it. But it was like, I mean, that one section of the class took us like 5 or 6 times.
Oh,
but yeah,
my gosh.
So anyway, you have to nail the good audio. That's what I called Rhett Scholl the other day, and we ended up talking for about an hour. But like, all right, we both have guitar channels, and we both find ourselves like, I have a camera with a shotgun mic on it, and I'm going into a guitar shop. But I don't like cameras, like they have an auto compressor and they have like a pretty weak, so like they just don't, they sound good for voices. That's what they're trying to do. But so Rhett and I both were like, okay, how do we do this? And we both came up with kind of the same idea, which is to do like a friction arm with a Zoom H5 or something that has like good mics on the outside of it, or just carry a separate tripod with you and just set up so you have some room audio that's better mics. But it's still, I mean, that's the hardest thing, is like I'm just on a constant mission to accurately represent acoustic guitars on the internet, which it's impossible, because it's like, well, I'm going to record it, and then I'm going to put it into Premiere, and then I'm going to export it, and then it's going to get squished by YouTube, and then somebody's going to listen to it on their phone on the bus.
Yep.
Like, and then they're going to say, this guitar doesn't have the rich mids I would expect. And you're like,
you know, it's really fun to listen to Mick over at That Pedal Show lament about this a little bit. And like there was an episode recently where Dan was having some work done on he was having the frets replaced on his 65 Telecaster.
Oh yeah.
And he just played it in the shop on like some, whatever the shop amp was, like nothing crazy, like a solid state, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And with the phone, just the phone collecting audio. And people in the comments were like, it sounded great in the shop. It sounded better than when it's in the big studio and everything. And Mick's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like, because all the compressors and whatnot in the phone, because we all, okay, those of us of a certain age, the Gen Zers may not remember this time, but we remember what audio on a cell phone used to sound like. We've seen those videos at a concert where someone decided to video with their flip phone, and it was just just god awful noise.
Which I wonder if it's also that it's just getting sent out on 1X, like it just got squat. Because even then, it's just too many freaking variables.
Yeah. Well, I know that the work that's been done with the iPhone, with the microphones and the compression that they have and gates, and they've worked hard to make it so that you can capture usable audio on your phone.
Yeah.
And they've done a great job. But it's not an accurate representation of what it actually sounds like.
Yeah. I think tone is pretty good. Like I have a Pixel 6 Pro. Mm-hmm. Like it's good tone, but what it's doing is like constant leveling. So it's just like it takes all the dynamics out of a guitar. Like it's like if you're playing fingerstyle acoustic, it brings all that up to be the same volume, and then you start playing and you hear it squish down the compression to bring, just the level back down for you playing louder. So I don't know. I mean, that's the hardest part. That's why I've resisted to a certain extent, but I'm certainly a demo channel, but I've resisted doing demos because to me, I'm like, it's too, I don't want to put my name on a thing that, ever since, and it's interesting, I just thought about this. So Donner, one of the first brands that wanted to work with me as a YouTuber, Donner wanted me to review one of their mandolins, and I got their mandolin. Yeah, Donner mandolins. So I got it and I reviewed it, and I was pretty honest. Not as honest as I was in some of those reviews that first year I was doing them. Didn't get sued over this one, but there was I put out this video for Donner, and then it was a year later, somebody sent me, I put out a review saying, hey, it's not actually that good. It sounds pretty bad. There's no fret indicators on the side. There's going to be a student mandolin. So like you need to put a good setup, a new tailpiece, like spend $150 on this $100 mandolin and it will be okay. Yeah. But Donner took my review and they edited it very heavily and they made it sound like I thought it was excellent.
Oh, wow.
And it was really interesting. Like I asked them about it. They took it down. It was never on YouTube, but it was on their Amazon listing. That they like put this like heavily edited version of my video. And one of my subscribers found it and sent it to me. But they just sent me a guitar today. I keep reviewing their guitars and saying they're bad, and they keep sending them to me. So
I did. So they sent me one. They sent me one of their electric guitars.
The DST 400.
Yeah. Actually, it wasn't terrible. At least the one I got was not bad.
They're getting much better.
Yeah, for the money in that guitar, I absolutely would recommend it. To be honest, for a beginner,
for
new player,
$190.
Yeah, and I ended up giving it away. I did a giveaway through Instagram. So listeners, if you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram. I do giveaways every now and again. It's real fun. But like they sent
I've got a little shell pink one they just sent. Oh yeah,
I did some pedals for them. A couple of them were real rad. The delay they've got, the white tape delay. That's a rad delay.
They have the dark mouse. It's like a rat.
Oh yeah.
It is so good.
Really?
Yeah. Surprised for $35 or something.
Yeah. The white tape delay was actually, so it says tape delay, but it's not a tape delay. It's an analog delay, and it's a true stereo analog delay. So there's a left and right in and a left and right out, and they have completely separate paths and completely separate set of controls. So I actually fed the guitar into left in. I took the left out, ran it back into the right in, and then right out to my amp. So I got dual delay out of it. It was that's awesome. It was so cool. But they also sent me their multi-reverb pedal, and it was awful.
Yeah. They've got a bunch of weird stuff. But I went through and like basically like over half of what they sent me. I made a full pedal board. They let me pick. They said pick as many as you want, and so I picked 15, I think. And I was like, I'm just gonna make the biggest pedal board I can. And I also wanted to test the capacity of they have a 12 output power supply.
Oh yeah, I saw that video.
18 volts. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm more curious about that thing. And what's interesting is it was super quiet. Like it was,
Really?
Surprisingly good for $40.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's where I'm like, well, to compare that to like a Volto or any of the other power supplies that are $150, 100, like I have an Ojai, a Strymon, a high power one. And then I have an MXR ISO block. ISO block was $90. So to me, I'm like, some of the small stuff Donner is doing is great.
Yeah.
All the electronic stuff I think is pretty good. I mean, what's interesting is they're clearly coming from copying other circuits and
Obviously.
like however you feel about that. There's no research and development. Yeah. And then they're just kind of packaging them. All of the descriptions they have of the pedals are nonsense.
They don't make any sense. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
One of the ones, well, I can't remember which one I demoed. Like, just give you an idea. This is, this fact alone doesn't matter, but it's just an idea of like the quality control and attention to detail. One of the pedals I got didn't even have a serial number on the back of it. Like, it was just blank where it should have been. Just blank.
Okay.
I was like, okay, Brad. Okay.
Yeah. My favorite was the wah pedal. It's a wah and a volume pedal. It's actually clever just in how it works. Like when you click the button, it's a wah, and when you click it off, then it's a volume pedal.
Right.
I think that's a clever idea. Although, I mean, it would be strange, but anyway, I prefer volume over wah. But the thing I loved about it was the name. It was just called Vowel.
Man.
You're you try and describe like wah, like what does it do? What does it sound like? It sounds like a vowel.
And you can tell that whoever's designing I'm going to use design in air quotes.
Yeah.
Designing their products isn't, they're either not a musician or they're just trying to put what can they make as fast as they can, as cheap as they possibly can. And
what words do you use? I mean, their branding, their packaging is all getting better. That's I do think it is exciting because this is now, I think, the 5th Donner guitar I've had. And I just got it this afternoon, and it really is great. Like for $250 or something, it's shell pink. It's an HSS, has a coil tap in the humbucker. It's like, it is better than any guitar you and I had the first couple electric guitars.
By a long shot.
Yeah.
A long shot. That one I had was the one they sent me, and I'm going to ruffle some feathers because I know there's some people who absolutely attend church at the altar of the 90s Made in Mexico Strat. It was better than most of the Made in Mexico Strats I ever played from the 90s.
Yeah.
And everybody used to talk about how great they were.
I mean, I think they're more on par with the 90s Korean stuff. Yeah. Well, or I don't know. Yeah. The fretwork on them especially.
There's a lot of hit and miss with the fretwork. The one I had would not have been a bad thing to have a fret dressing done to it. Yeah. But you pay whatever the bench fee is to get that fret dressing done, and you've got a really solid first guitar. Yeah.
But then one of the things, so another thing I got to do this year that was super fun, I got to go spend a couple days with the guys at the acoustic shop in Springfield, Missouri. And it's do you know those guys? It's the Chapmans.
I don't know them, but I've heard of the shop.
Yeah. So they're like a bluegrass band. They were in Colorado, and then they moved to Missouri when they were kids. But they traveled and played bluegrass forever. So it's 3 brothers. They grew up with Chris Thiele, and so they're in that kind of.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is funny. I mean, you and I didn't grow up in the bluegrass world.
No.
And I go into it now. I'm like, they're like, that's Ricky Bob. He used to play bass for Merle Travis. And you're like, okay. And everybody knows all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know anything.
No.
But
I see where I grew up. They stopped at the end of the word blue. That was it. Blues. They just stopped there.
I have way less experience with blues. I know nothing in the blues.
Oh man, you got to come down. April.
I know.
Festival. You got to come. You got to get.
That's
down
the thing I need to. Yeah, if music is a language, I just didn't grow up with any of there was no exposure to the dialect of blues or jazz.
We need to make that happen.
But I got Celtic. I got Celtic folky mountain music, not quite bluegrass. But anyway, so I was one of the guitars that's super exciting that is made in China is there's a new partnership between Bourgeois Guitars and Eastman.
Yeah, I've
and
seen
so
that.
Eastman is now building guitars with the Bourgeois name in China. And I've got one or two of them coming in the next couple weeks here to Nashville. So
yeah, I'd be really
maybe
interested.
we can coordinate. Ooh, because you have.
I have.
Do you still have your?
Yeah, I've still got my Bourgeois. It's in the other room right now. But
what is yours?
It's a OM vintage. So I emailed Bourgeois. Actually, that's another thing. I got to for a very brief moment. I got to talk to Dana when I was in Chicago a little while back. Supposed to get him on the podcast. I got real busy at work. I'm going to email him here in the next few weeks and try to get Dana to hop on. He said he'd absolutely do it. So I just got to make that connection. But the one I have, I sent them pictures. I took a ton of pictures, and sent it to them just because I wanted some info, on it. And they said, okay, yeah, it's Sitka spruce and mahogany back and sides, or was it rosewood? I've got the email. I'll look.
How do you not know that?
I know.
That's real.
I know. Because my brain is a jumbled mess right now.
Yeah.
I'm coming out of the most stressful period of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
Normally things I would remember right now, they've completely left my brain. But yeah, I sent them, the picture of the inside of the label on the inside and everything. And they're like, yeah, that one was made, in this year. It was probably around, if I remember correctly, it's like one of the 900th area or so he ever built before he built Paragon
you told me
Music.
That.
Yeah. And so it's very early. It's around 97. So it's getting close to due for a neck reset, to be honest.
Yeah.
Neck reset and some bridge work.
Is yours
saddle work?
Is it a tone tight or is it a dovetail? Do you know?
I don't know, actually, 100%.
Okay, yeah.
Because I don't know when he made the swap.
He was pretty early.
Yeah, I think it's the for lack of a better word, it's a bolt-on. Yeah, it's a bolt-on neck.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is, because I think he swapped in like way like couple hundred guitars in. He swapped.
That's what I was thinking. Because I think so it makes it way easier to take the neck off and adjust the neck angle. So basically, you just have to remove they have to loosen the glue on the fretboard extension on the top of the guitar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've got, there's a really great luthier here in Mississippi named Joey Burrell. Has Burrell guitars, builds acoustic guitars. Joey does all my guitar work, so I'm going to take it to him and be like, hey,
so
Joey,
good,
take care of this for me.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have
that's
someone
an excellent guitar.
locally. Yeah, I'm super pumped. I love that guitar. I put the K&K in like you suggested.
Oh, isn't that so good?
I did go with the sound hole preamp.
Okay, good.
Which actually, because it's a smaller body, I actually had to. So the backing plate for the preamp didn't fit between the bracing, so I had to on the preamp, not the guitar. I cut the preamps area so it fit between the bracing. So I'm not
popsicle brace.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, this works. This is good. It sounds good. I like it a lot more than the LR bags in my Larrivee. To be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah,
much more natural sounding.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, it might be a little darker, but you can kind of fix that. I think, and I love LR bags. I have them in many guitars, but they're a bit quacky. It's just that style of transducer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do think I will at some point. I actually think I will end up buying a floor acoustic preamp. And
you should
going straight to the output jack instead of having the preamp in there because I'm playing more resonator lately, and and I don't have any kind of onboard preamp for that, so that I need something to plug that into.
There you go.
I got a really smoking deal on an Alvarez, low end Alvarez baritone and a 12-string that I'm playing a lot right now.
Cool.
Dude, it was wild. This guy had them on Facebook Marketplace for a while and had terrible pictures. Like
good,
atrocious, grainy pictures. And he wanted like $300 for the baritone and like $275 for the 12-string. And I messaged him and I was like, maybe, and then just left it alone, right? And a couple weeks later, they were still there. I sort of poked the bear again. And eventually he said, he sent me a message, said, hey, would you be willing to take both of these for $300 total? like 300.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah. I said,
which he said that or you said that?
He said that. He said
okay,
that.
Good.
Yeah, he offered him for 300, and then I would have had to drive out of town for him a little ways, not far. It's like, I don't know, 10 miles. I just didn't want to drive. I was like, where do you want to meet? I suggested a couple of places. He said, I'll tell you what, you can have them for $280 if you'll come here to get them. I was like, okay. So yeah, got a nice little Alvarez and baritone, both.
Oh, that's fun.
$280. Yeah, it's fun. So I'm gonna have to put a pickup in those though.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't want to put a preamp or anything in them. I'll just put a straight, K&K straight to the jack.
Yeah, I mean they're great, especially that into like an LR Bags venue or a pair of DI.
Yep.
Or the Fishman Tone Deck is pretty good. Ooh, the Fishman Tone Deck actually has a feature that makes it more helpful than the LR Bags. They have a low cut.
That'll be really good for that baritone because it gets low.
And you just get all that body noise. Like you cut it at an 80 or 120, you just get enough. Like it's still bassy, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's rad.
I wish I had Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Like the LR Bags does great things. The Tone Deck does great things. They both, like one doesn't have a tuner, one doesn't have a low cut.
Right. Yeah, but if you got a headstock tuner, you're fine. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we are hitting the end of this episode, and we're going to go over to Patreon, and maybe we'll talk about those differences. So, listeners, if you want to join us on the rest of this conversation, we're going to be over on Patreon. $5 a month gets you this episode and the bonus content and the entire back catalog, which is it's pretty big now. It's
becoming a better deal.
Yeah,
every episode is a better deal than before.
That's exactly right. Your dollar is worth more every episode. So go over there.
Suck on that inflation.
So kick inflation to the curb. Go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, and you can help keep this show going. Jeremy, appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, man. This was super fun.
Yeah, it's always a blast to get you on and talk guitars and just let the conversation go where it's going, which is my favorite kind of way to do podcasting. Structured ones give me anxiety. So listeners, until next time, really appreciate you hanging out. Really appreciate your support. Actually, hold on a second. I know. I already had this wrapped up, right? Well, I need to do a thing that I didn't do on my last episode, and I'm so sorry. I need to thank all of my supporters. I'm going to thank you by name. So, first of all, at the $5 level, I want to thank Andy Koenig, David Ishizaka of the Timber Owls, Jeffrey Walks, Jim Burns, Kyle Harris, Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Scott
Rick
Hamilton.
Calhoun.
Yeah, man. Rick's the dude, man.
Dude, he's the freaking best.
I love him. What's that?
I got a honey pick in my pocket right now.
I'm actually been sitting here fiddling with one the whole time. But got Scott Hamilton from the Effects Loop and got Tom Kelly. At the $10 level, I want to thank Ben Fair, Dan Pilver from Lewitt Audio, and Heath Batt. Thank you all so much for your support. You literally keep the show going, and I cannot appreciate it more. So until next time, y'all take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and try to make some noise.